Welcome to GLOBEWATCH with me, Charles EBUNE. Although yet to be completely eliminated, Boko Haram has been defeated. Those are the words of Nigerian Army Chief of Staff, Major General Yusuf Buratai Toku. His statement comes roughly a year ago since the Nigerian Information Minister, Lai Mohammed, told me on this program that Boko Haram has been defeated. So, are the declarations by the political and military bureaucrats a true reflection of the situation on the ground? My guest today on GLOBEWATCH is the outgoing commander of the Multinational Joint Task Force against Boko Haram, who previously served as the commander of the 7th Division in the Nigerian military, specifically tasked to make Boko Haram history. Major General Lamidi Adiusum, welcome to GLOBEWATCH.
Thank you very much.
The idea of a multinational joint task force was drafted back in 1994 by then Nigerian military leader Sani Abacha to principally carry out, quote, checkmate banditry activities and to facilitate free movement, end of quote, north of Nigerian borders, which has been rebranded as the Multinational Joint Task Force against the Boko Haram insurgency today. Tell me the situation you met on the ground roughly a year ago.
The situation I met on ground roughly a year, I will want to look beyond a year ago because this month will make me 1.5 years as commander, Multinational Joint Task Force. And before coming as commander, Multinational Joint Task Force, I was also privileged to command the 7th Division of the Nigerian Army at the epicenter of Boko Haram activities in the Borno state of the northeast of Nigeria. So, if I had to look back, I think I will look beyond 1 year ago, because it has been a long-drawn battle, especially from the peak of Boko Haram activities in December 2014 to January 2015, when Boko Haram captured all the important towns and cities, particularly in Borno, leaving only Maiduguri, and even the Maiduguri was surrounded and was almost taken. That was what Boko Haram used to be. The international community issued so many warnings for their nationals not to go near the northeast. Some even say they shouldn't go to Nigeria. That was how it was then. It was as terrible as that, to the extent that they even took military barracks and are living and using the military barracks as their basis, as well as declaring cities and towns in Borno as their caliphate headquarters and subsidiary headquarters of their activities.
I will go back to my pioneer question. Insofar as the Multinational Joint Task Force is concerned, what is the situation you met on the ground vis-a-vis the military capability of Boko Haram in particular?
Very good. 1.5 years ago, when I became the commander of Multinational Joint Task Force, my predecessors have already put the forces together. The 4 sectors of Multinational Joint Task Force, starting with Sector 1 in Mora, which came on board sometimes in September. Sector 2, which was the last to come on board. When I say September, I'm talking of September 2015. Sector 2, which was the last to come on board, was in January 2016. Sector 3 was at 31st July 2015. As at then, Sector 3 had a subsector in Difa, though that subsector is a full-fledged sector now in DIFA, Niger Republic.
That is in Niger.
Niger Republic. So as for multinational joint task force troops, they were fully configured and fully mobilized and deployed when I took over the command. That yeoman's job was done by my predecessors.
Okay.
Then on the side of Boko Haram was also very, very strong along and across the borders. There were so many towns and islands of Lake Chad and towns in the northeast of Nigeria, in the Diva region of Niger, in the tripartite border Nigeria, Niger, Chad, Nigeria, Chad, Cameroon, and Nigeria and Cameroon.
Okay.
But
according to British tabloids, The Telegraph, Boko Haram had occupied a space of roughly 20,000 square kilometers. That is almost the size of Belgium. You just cited that they even had at one moment occupied military barracks, the case of Baga and many other areas. What is the portion under Boko Haram control today? How much have you reduced the occupational land capacity of Boko Haram today?
If it's in terms of territory,
yes,
there is no specific territory that you can allocate to Boko Haram as we speak. They are not feasible and fully deployed and
so
holding.
You mean to tell me that there is no particular portion of land in Cameroon, Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Benin which can be attributed under Boko Haram control today? Completely.
No, there is no, to my knowledge, there is no local government, entire local government, entire region, or entire prefecture that you can allocate. I would say Boko Haram is the only force that is occupying these specific areas.
So in terms of military battle, what does that mean for you people who are fighting?
What that means is that Boko Haram is not a feasible and collective target that we can use only conventional means to deal with, like we have done before. When they were holding barracks, holding towns and villages, it is easier to plan and take on those barracks and villages and towns and recover it from them, free captives, and move on from one place to the other. But now that they are in splinter groups in remote villages and in no particular place, they become more dangerous to deal with. And you see that it's also difficult for them to mobilize and go and attack massively to take a town or to take a city. Their capacity now is 80% use of improvised explosive devices, either carried by suicide bombers or by vehicles to go and ram into maybe a crowd, a market, a mosque, or other places, just to continue to show that they are still there, to make some statements.
Okay, if I understand you clearly, you mean to tell me that, like Minister Lai Mohammed, your information minister, told me roughly a year ago on this program, and like one of the previous commanders of the multinational joint task force, who is today the Army Chief of Staff of the Nigerian military, stated to Stephen Saka of Hard Talk on BBC a few days ago that Boko Haram has been defeated militarily. Is it safe to say that?
It is safe to say that. But when you talk of terrorism, you just have to look back and see that in any part of the world where terrorism has been the order of the day, even when they are defeated militarily, they still retain this capacity to carry out kamikaze attack, to attack isolated places with particularly improvised explosive devices. And in this part of the world where our borders are so vast, and technology and other capacities to really police the borders and manage the borders, we have not got there. Every country is doing so well, bilaterally, multinational, or nationally, but we are not yet there. So proliferation of small arms, even without Boko Haram, has been fueling a lot of insecurity and banditry, especially in the remote recess areas close to the borders and what have you. So these are challenges that we'll continue to think out of the box on how to manage, so that not only Boko Haram, other forms of criminalities will eventually
there are basically 4 countries involved in this battle: Cameroon, Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and if you want to extrapolate, you can add Benin Republic. The Nigerian army alone counts some 130,000 active frontline soldiers. The Nigerian police alone is about 371,800 men and women to ensure security. The Cameroonian army is about 20,000 individuals. The multinational joint task force, which you are heading, is roughly 8,700 personnel, assisted by some 300 military advisors from the United States of America on the command of the Cameroonian government. I just wonder why all these well-trained men and women are unable to easily say goodbye to a group of people researchers have simply called a bunch of criminals in the name of Boko Haram. What is the problem? What is the key problem?
A very beautiful academic analysis that you have just given. They're a bunch of criminals, but they can drive tanks, they can use APCs, they can use anti-aircraft guns. Are those just a bunch of criminals? What you have said is journalistic and academic. The reality on ground is different from what you're talking about. When you talk of Nigeria having 130 or armed forces, Boko Haram is not the only security challenge in Nigeria. In Cameroon, Boko Haram is not the only security challenge Cameroon is having. The same goes for other countries that are part of this enterprise. It's just one of the major security challenges they are having, and that is why they also dedicated considerable efforts to ensure security across the sub-region. You understand? So, to say they are just a bunch of criminals, 130-something thousand, no. If Cameroon has 20,000 soldiers, only 2,250 are really dedicated to multinational joint task force. Other military regions have their own deployments, not only fighting against Boko Haram, but also taking care of other security challenges around. So when you people are doing this paper analysis, I think it's good that we have interactions like this so that we can understand.
That's why you are my guest.
So that we can understand ourselves better.
Yeah, you have been on the field. You headed the 7th Division, which principally was fighting Boko Haram. Yeah. You said that they man planes, they drive cars, heavy ammunition.
I'm not saying they are manning planes. I say anti-aircraft guns.
Anti-aircraft guns?
Yeah.
Where do they get all of that?
Well, many of them were captured when they started ravaging police stations, gendarmerie posts, taking over military barracks, and subsequent subsidiary operations when the countries were not really taking it when the countries were thinking they were just like bandits that newspapers have analyzed them, until it dawned on everybody that this is a very serious business.
Okay.
So based on that, they have, at the initial stage, all those capabilities. And because of what I've just said, porous borders.
Porous borders.
It is easy for inflow of arms from other troubled spots, particularly Libya, Mali, Central African Republic, seeping through the borders. All the countries are doing so much, deploying so many efforts to block some of these things. But we should take cognizance of how big and vast and difficulties in policing these borders.
You replaced General Yusuf Buratai Tuku, who is today heading the Nigerian Army as military, as Army Chief of Staff, roughly 1 year, 6 months ago. What are the clear successes you have achieved during your command?
Thank you very much. I took over from Major General Ilya Abba.
Thanks for that correction.
He took over from the current Chief of Army Staff in Nigeria. But within the 1.5 years I've been at the saddle of Multinational Joint Task Force, a lot has been achieved. The forces were put together and they were deployed before I came. Under my watch, with the support of political and military leadership of the sub-region, today, which was not the situation before, we are now operating in cooperation across, within, and around the borders, militarily. Few years back, nobody can think about that, because the border lines drawn 1884 in Berlin was being respected.
Now you like understand that you are Africans, that you can work together without any difficulty.
It's not only we, including you people, because you people orchestrate it more.
The media?
The media orchestrate these things more and confuse the reality on the ground in the name of maybe, let's cover it with nationalistic fervor. But the reality is we are the same people. If you go to Banki, let me just take that. If you go to Banki, Banki is just one town, but divided by, if you see the border post in Banki, it is a twine like this that they use as border post, because it's the same town. But because the line drawn cut the two towns into two, can you say those in Cameroon side should not relate with those in Nigeria side? It's not possible. They are the same people. So this is just a typical example. And on all the towns and villages that straddle the so-called borders, it's the same people. So now that a common security challenge has come, it became very clear that we need to really work together, and that we have achieved. That is a very great achievement.
Okay, now let's talk the...
aside from that, in military terms, we have together, jointly conducted 2 combined and joint operations. Looking at the type of deployment we have, every country providing the sector and deploying in its own, within its own territory.
This is a very perilous battle. You know, one of your colleagues, General Koji,
yes,
died in the course of the battles. Boko Haram has been changing tactics from suicide bombings to using females, now in doing all kind of jigsaw puzzling. What is that key challenge facing military personnel like you in combating terrorism in general and the Boko Haram extraction in particular?
Terrorism war is not a type of war that you have a red line and a blue line. That is the major challenge of the fight against Boko Haram. And that is why in technical terms they call it asymmetric warfare. We are 6 of us sitting down here. But you only know yourself, and I know myself. I don't know any other person. But we can sit together like this and do everything. Maybe what we are saying now, before you even broadcast it, somebody can tell the other party That is one of the major difficulties of fighting this type of battle.
Keeping military intelligence.
Not only keeping military intelligence, it is a difficult battle when the person you are sitting with can also be the agent of the other group. That is one. Okay. Then fighting the Boko Haram is actually expensive in human and material resources because of the high rate of casualties both on the civilian and military side.
General, just hang on. You just talked about financial difficulties.
I have not mentioned financial.
No, you just said that it is costly and that
it's expensive.
It's expensive, and that has to do with finances and human resources. The multinational joint task force was expected to have a budget of roughly 700 million. You are on the ground working. When you see the way the material is being provided to you people, do you think that the necessary budget has been available?
Well, I'm not too much into financial issues. I'm concerned with military operation. But if I will talk within the limit of the knowledge I have, what has supported multinational joint task force to reach the level it has reached today in terms of finances is principally the money Nigeria placed on the table to the LCBC Executive Secretariat and Head of Mission for the setting up, administration and operation of multinational joint task force. There are pledges, yes, from Britain, from European Union, but all these, including African Union, but all these pledges are domiciled and midwifed by African Union. And when you look at the caveats attached to such donations, the bureaucracies, both within the AU and within the other organizations that pledge these resources. In fact, at the end of it all, when the African Union submitted the bill of over $700 million, and at the end of the donor conference, both in material and everywhere you quantify everything, is about 200 million that was pledged. But what has come on the table, you can give detailed account of that. But within the multinational joint task force, I know what has come in terms of assistance. Some vehicles, communication equipment, so especially that communication equipment they brought from Bangui. That assisted multinational joint task force a lot. Multinational joint task force is unique in its setting, in its operation, in its logistics. But their provision for additional logistics is the caveat under which African Union is supposed to mobilize all those resources and apply them to provide the requirement submitted by multinational joint task force from the assessment on ground.
You told Radio France International, RFI, that Boko Haram is like, quote, a fish which was supposed to have been taken out of water. When will that fish finally be taken out of water and maybe be sold or be eaten?
I don't think Boko Haram is a fish that should be eaten, even when it's completely out of water. Those who choose to continue to fight, unfortunately, when you are in battle, two things are likely to happen. Three things. Either you die, you surrender and face prosecution, if possible, or you are captured. When you are captured, you are also taken through the process and face prosecution as may be necessary. Or you give up completely and wait for your authority to decide using all the national and international legal means to undo the situation. So that's why I say Boko Haram might not be the fish that is out of water. After it's struggling and death, then you carry it to go and eat. I'm afraid that analogy may not work. But every country has the national strategy, which is being supported by international community on how to craft out some form of de-radicalization arrangement for the repentant ones who will come out alive. But you know, in this kind of hard indoctrination, some may opt to just live and die with their belief. So that's why I said it may not be possible to say you must eat the dead fish of Boko Haram.
The outgoing commander of the Multinational Joint Task Force against Boko Haram, Major General Lamidi Adeosum, thank you very much indeed for being guest on our program.
Thank you. God bless you.
You're welcome.
Well done.